Welcome to Brick by Brick. Join me, Lauren Winnett, as I share my personal journey of building a thriving real estate and hard money lending business from the ground up. Along the way, we'll explore the strategies, challenges, and breakthroughs that come with growing wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor or aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the world of private lending and real estate, this podcast is packed with actionable insights, real-world stories, and mindset tips to help you build your own path to success brick by brick. Welcome to Brick by Brick. Today I'm joined by Matthew Carrigan. Matthew is founder of REI Cornerstone. In just a few short years, he's carved out a strong place in the investing world by mastering the art of building relationships with real estate agents. Matthew's story is a great one. He's called this his earned and learned approach, and we're going to talk about that today. He started off working for someone else, discovered the power of outreach firsthand, and then replicated that system in his own business. We're going to dig into just how he built REI Cornerstone and how he's using agent outreach to really bolster his wholesaling business. Matthew, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren. Thanks for having me. I know we've spoke a while back, and glad to kind of put things together here.
Yeah. So level set the audience here. You're, in layman's terms, essentially a wholesaler, right? So can you explain what wholesaling is and explain what you're doing that's a bit different than the typical wholesaling approach that most people think about?
Right. I tell all my friends and family, it's like selling the paper, right? Or it's like, the wholesalers, Walmart's essentially a wholesaler. They buy from the producers, they're the middleman, they sell it to the end buyer, right? Same thing. So we find the deals. Our method's through real estate agents. So we find deals typically off market. We're trying to get into the MLS space now, but typically off market, we find them at a discount, add our fee on it. We hence sell the paper or double close, and then we sell it for a fee. That's probably 95% of my business. We get into some fix and flips and new builds along the way, but yeah, for the most part, we're selling paper, and I typically use agent outreach to do that, right? So we're leveraging real estate agents, and think about it, right? We're not the only one going direct to seller. You go to direct to seller, and then you typically get one deal. I mean, because most sellers just have one house they need to sell. But real estate agents, that's their ball game, right? They're in the playing field all the time trying to, they're doing their own direct to seller marketing, and you find 10, 15, 20 really good agents, and you got a consistent deal flow. Now, it takes a lot of repetition to kind of find those agents. Sometimes you get lucky, but for the most part, that's kind of the name of the game and how we have really built success here.
Interesting. So what percentage of your deals do you think are coming from realtors, or you're sending to realtors, versus direct from seller, direct to buyer, internal systems?
I would say 80 to 85% of my deals are direct to agent or through real estate agents. Very rarely do I get a direct to seller deal. Most of the time I'm getting them through wholesalers that I've worked with previously. So if you're a wholesaler and want to network, I'm always up for that. But most of the time, because we obviously have built a big buyers list over the years and can sell things pretty consistently. But, sometimes I'll get maybe 15, 20% of my deals come from other wholesalers too that are like, hey, man, I got this deal. Can you help me find someone for it? So that's, I would say 20% of my business is that, and the other 80 is through agents.
Got it. So walk me through from the time you get a deal all the way to its close, what a deal looks like, who's involved, how they're involved, what everybody's workload is, and how it's benefiting each person.
Right. So in my team that we have 2 acquisition managers. I've got a dispo manager, and then I have a VA. And the VA pretty much sources, does all the back end work, right? Like uploading the agents, making sure that if we're skip tracing buyers and calling buyers, she's doing that back end. But let's say we get a deal from an agent. Typically you sign a buyer broker agreement stating that, hey, just covering the agent pretty much, so you don't go behind their back and talk to the seller, which I tell them, hey, it's a relationship business. Like, that's not my goal. My goal is to do multiple deals with you. So I wouldn't do that, but understand. So we just make sure it's property specific, right? We sign a buyer broker agreement that's property specific. I'll sign those all day long. Send me put the property address on there. We'll sign that. And then from that point, we let the agent typically double dip, right? They can represent us and the seller. So now instead of getting 2.5 or 3%, they're getting 5 or 6. So we go through that. We get the property under contract. Of course, it goes to the attorney in North Carolina. Other states are through title companies. And at that point, the I generally am closing on 60, 70, north of that on my deals, right? I don't really get stuff under contract that I don't feel like I can sell as a good deal. Obviously, things happen. There's some unforeseen there, but for the most part, I know that I have a buyer in my back pocket for the deal, so I'm not wasting agents' time, sellers' time. We're getting under contract and typically closing in 3 weeks.
Got it. So a seller's got a property and they see all the signs for X realtor. They reach out to said realtor, and the realtor's like, well, I'm probably not going to be able to sell this to just a normal Joe home buyer because it needs work or something, right? And so that's
Right.
when they reach out to you.
Yeah, so we have since cultivated like a list of these agents, right? Every day I tell my guys, hey, I know that we have thousands of agents that we're following up with, but we got to continue to fuel the pipeline, right? So we have we time block a lot in our business. I'll make sure we implement that, and at any given day, it's at least 1 to 2 hours of cold outreach, whether that's through text message, scheduling phone calls, and then from there, they're then put on like our active agent drip campaign where we're following up every 2 to 3 weeks with them, checking in. Hey, because at the end of the day, real estate's a numbers game, and it's all about being there at the right spot at the right time. So sometimes they're like, yeah, actually, I do have this deal coming up. And it's like, great. Well, let me know about it before it's to market. Let's make a good deal for both of us. That's typically how we do it is we find these agents that are willing to work with us, willing to send us opportunities. And I tell them, I'm like, look, I'm probably not the best fit for 90% of your clientele, but that 10% that is in a situation that they need help, they need out of, whether it's pre-foreclosure, I've stopped foreclosures before. You're just really trying to be an asset to the agent. That's what you need to do, and let them understand, like, hey, if the seller's not willing to pay your commission, I'll pay your commission, right? So we just want to get the deal done, and as long as the numbers make sense, that's what matters.
So I think you hear a lot, at least I hear a lot in the media and things of this. It's almost like wholesalers versus realtors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wholesalers are taking deals from realtors, and realtors are trying to put legislation in place to block wholesalers. But it sounds like you're kind of creating a situation that's beneficial in a lot of ways to both parties. If you're a realtor, if I'm a realtor, why do I want to work with you other than I can get both the front and the back end commission on a sale?
Well, contrary, my belief is some of your best investors don't look on the MLS. Like some of your top investors, they don't have time to scrape the MLS for listings. So we are constantly doing outreach to buyers. Like I'm not going you have the retail buyers. I don't want any part of that, right? I'm looking for the buyers that want the ugly stuff. And so we have a Rolodex of those buyers, and if you have a listing that is probably not going to pass for a conventional loan, or it's pretty rough, it needs some work, like if it comes to, if your seller's being realistic with their price and they want a quick sell, chances are I've got the buyers to give us a quick sell, and we can work out a fee on my end where it's essentially, hey, I'll give you X amount of money to find me a buyer for this quick. Like that's fine. I'm just about deal flow, right? Like I don't have to make a ton every time I get under contract on a property. You'll take your singles, your doubles, and then every now and then you'll hit your home runs. So yeah, that's the beneficial part of it.
Got it. Interesting. So I did a little bit of wholesaling in the past, and this was not part of my strategy. How did you get to this being a big portion of your business strategy, and kind of where did you start out in real estate, and how you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled across it on YouTube. I was working a W-2. I was a salesman for a construction rental company, and I just was tired of the headache. And I was like, there's got to be another way. And I think I stumbled across like Jerry Norton or something, and kind of saw, I went down the rabbit trail of this thing called wholesaling. And I said, okay, well, let's see what happened. And I was driving around, and I downloaded this like Driving for Dollars app on my phone, and was driving past some of these houses and just clicking them in there. And after of course I made sure that the business I was working for was first, and if I had some time on a break or at lunch, I would just pull up that list of these properties I've compiled. The system I use had already skip traced them for me, and I would just call them and see if they was interested in selling. I got a lot of no's, but then I got my first yes, and I was like, oh gosh, what do I do now? Because it was my first deal. And I made, I think that first deal I made 15 grand, and I was like, holy cow, I did this in like 3 weeks, and it takes me I don't even know, 3 or 4 months to make that in the job I was in. And I said, oh, this is definitely what I've got to go try and see how I can do this more.
So on that first deal, how did you know what to offer price wise? And how did you know what it was going to sell for? Did you have previous real estate experience, or where did that knowledge come from?
Everything I just learned from YouTube. I just was like, I look, I needed to learn how to comp, and so I went on YouTube, and I think at the time all I watched was Sherry Norton stuff. So I had enough I could think I was a little dangerous, and then I knew how to find some buyers. So I got under contract on what I felt like was a good price. It was this at this point it was 100,000. And then this buyer up there said she would give me 115 for it. And I said, I was just, I was like, oh my gosh. And so we sold it. And yeah, but to answer your question, I just kind of learned through YouTube. I didn't really join any mentorships until later on.
Did you start watching those YouTube videos and learning that process after you had the house under contract, or during, or before?
Before, yeah, I just kind of came across it. I had done some Amazon FBA. I'd actually had a project, a thing that they produced for me in China, and then I came over here and sold it. So I've always been the type of person who was always looking for ways to make some money, some extra money. And I just found it, and I was thinking, well, in my job, I work all day, but I do drive a lot. So hence the driving for dollars thing. I could easily pull up an app and just add some houses as I drove by them, kind of killed two birds with one stone deal. And that's just the route I chose at that time because I was always on the road. And yeah, that's kind of what got me started.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's important to know, because I think there's a lot of people that have never really gotten started. You see them at meetings. Like I go to a lot of TRIA meetings and other things, and oh, I don't have a deal yet, or I'm just getting started. They've been going to meetings for 6 months, but they haven't done anything. And you get this mentality of, I've got to know everything and I have to feel comfortable before I pull the trigger. And I remember my first deal, literally driving, had a triplex under contract, was driving to the attorney's office to close on it, and was thinking about just turning around and going home and just scrapping the whole thing. Because like, I don't know how to manage 3 units. I don't know how to manage construction. It's an hour and a half from my home. All the reasons why I can't. Still have that property today, still cash flows.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the catalyst to get me into real estate. I think too many people just get scared of the unknowns.
Yeah, it's like analysis paralysis. They're just like, oh, like you got to know this, and this. And the best way to know is to jump in and do it. Like you're going to make some mistakes along the way. The good thing about wholesaling is what's worst case scenario? As long as you structure the contract right and you don't have a ton of money on the line, like you can cancel before your inspection period ends, and you just need to go back. And obviously, we're not here to waste people's time, right? But we need to go back and analyze, okay, well, connect with someone like myself or Lauren and say, why did I get this wrong? But until you actually go out there and do it, you're never going to know if you can do it right or not. And you might just surprise yourself. Like me, I promise you probably know just as much as I did at that time whenever I got that property in a contract. But whenever your feet's to the fire and you got to figure it out, it just kind of happens like that.
Yeah, you get that pressure of, I have to figure this out, and it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing what you can come up with, right? All of a sudden your brain's turned on to finding solutions, and you're going
Mm-hmm.
to find those solutions. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
when did you get started?
I guess 3 years ago now. I've probably been doing this for 3 years, and I started on my own 3 or 4 months. I then joined a mentorship where that helped me out, and then I just want a consistent deal flow. So then I kind of did like an earn and learn thing, and I worked for somebody who was very successful within the mentorship, and I learned a lot from him. And I said, okay, well, I can replicate this. So then I put it in my business, and here we are today. That's kind of my milestones and steps I've had within the real estate realm.
Got it. So, during that time, there had to have been some failures or some massive learnings along the way. Talk to me about a couple of the things that, you got into and you didn't know what you're up over your eyes, and you just learned the hard way.
I think shiny object syndrome. I think that there's probably 10 different ways you can wholesale something, maybe more, right? You've got direct to seller. Well, within direct to seller, you've got email, or you've got what, pay per click, you've got pay per lead, you have texting, cold calling, direct mail. So there's five, and I'm probably just scratching the surface. but and they all work. The beauty is they all work, but they only work if you're consistent with them, right? And so the mentorship I learned, I kind of got a part of, they just kind of really preach direct to agent, because you think about it, if you connect with one seller, you really can only, that seller more than likely probably only has one house, unless you get lucky. But you got these agents out there, that's what they do. Some of these agents that are full time, they're getting leads from their brokerage, they're doing their own direct to seller marketing, and you just get to be the recipient of that. So instead of you paying for direct to seller marketing, they pay for it, and then you're just the connection, right? And really a lot of repeat business when you get a really good agent.
So did you go down the path of shiny object syndrome, and what are some of the things that you tried and just didn't like, or did you just fall right into this model because of the mentorship that you had along the way?
I kept doing a lot of what I found myself doing is driving for dollars, and I was doing some deals that way, but it was just very time intensive. I don't know. I thought that just had to be a better way. And then I got into some texting a little bit, and I got a deal or two from that, but it just wasn't consistent like some of these people that I saw doing deals. And I was just around a lot of people that was doing direct to agent outreach. And so I saw that guy in the group, and then I went into his system essentially, and I learned how to do it. And I said, I can do this in my mind. So I kind of created a system similar. And yeah, that's just the route I chose after that. I felt like my cost per deal was a lot cheaper direct to agent than it is direct to seller.
Interesting. Yeah, so we've had a couple other people that do direct to seller connections, and so we had one guy on Mike. He basically just does pay per click, right,
Mm-hmm.
and SEO. And then we had another person on who, well, one of my good friends. They just do straight up cold calling. He
Mm-hmm.
makes like 100 grand a year just on wholesaling deals, just straight cold calling. But either way, you got to have a system, right?
Right.
Mike had a system. So talk to me about your system. I think you're a go high level user.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about the evolution from, you have one app on your phone where you're driving around looking for houses with long grass
Yeah.
to where you are today, where you have several team members and integrated CRM system that you're working on the back end.
Yeah, so I think that the CRM system and how to set that up came from the guy that I worked with a lot out in California. I learned that business and then almost replicated that in a way in my own business through Go High Level. I saw what he was doing. Obviously, I did it for like 8 or 9 months. I made him a lot of money, but also learned a lot in the process. Of course, I got paid too, but I was making 20%, I think, assignment fees. And so then the process is you kind of cultivate this list of agents. You don't have to pay for any skip tracing because it's all public data. Real estates want you to have their number. As an agent, it's public, it's out there. So then you just kind of create a text campaign and try to get them on the phone. Typically, our intro calls, 5 minutes or less. That's what I tell my guys. And then you just kind of tell them what we're after. We're looking for those properties that need some work. Would love to be a resource for you. Another tool in the tool belt that maybe you can bring to your seller. You might come across one of these a year. We just want to you know, be in your back pocket when that comes around. And then so at that point, as long as they don't tell you no, you put them on like a drip campaign. You follow up with them every 2 or 3 weeks, and a lot of times it's just being at the right place at the right time and following up with them whenever they do have something.
And they're getting a lot of calls like this from other wholesalers, I assume.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know if it's as saturated as what these owners are getting from direct to seller marketing. Because that I know that they get hounded a lot, but yeah, but at the end of the day, an agent's that's their job is to answer phone calls that hopefully connects them with potential opportunities. So yeah, we definitely and we understand that, and we say, hey, look, we understand that you get a lot of these calls, and we're not saying that we have to be your top priority or your number one. I just want to be a resource for you down the road. Give us a chance on a couple of them, and hopefully we build a relationship that's good for both of us.
It's a numbers game, right? You know just as well as I that sometimes realtors are hard to get to answer the phone or return phone
Yeah.
calls because they get so many calls.
I had a property I went and looked yesterday, right? And you got to understand some of these real estate agents, probably most of them, it's not their full time job, right? Like, and she was selling me a house, and we're under contract as we speak. But I said, hey, you want to go in and look at this thing? And she didn't even want to go in and look at the property that she's trying to sell me. I'm like, well, Okay, because I was trying to hit her with a price reduction coming, like, because I know it's going to need it. I was told it was a 3-2. I get there and it's a 2-1, but that's just real estate. It's always the unexpected you get when you get in there. But I just thought it was funny that she didn't want to go in and look at it because I want her to understand, like, hey, we kind of came into this thinking it was a 3-2, and then we get here and it's a 2-1, and then she doesn't want to go in there, but it's okay. I still think we have it at a good price, and we'll see what we can do with it.
Everybody's got their niche, right? And I found that a lot of the realtors that I've seen or talked to that are not investor focused, they don't fully get what we deal with. I had bought a whole bunch of rentals at one point, and I had an investor focused realtor, and she was like, "Okay, yeah, we're gonna go walk this thing. I just know I'm gonna have to wash my clothes and take a shower when we get done
Yeah.
because some of these things are pretty bad, right?"
Yep.
But and then other times like, okay, I'm not going to go in this because they're used to looking at these brand new houses and without any of the nastiness that you might see with a wholesale house. So it's just a different way of doing business, and everybody's got their niche, right?
Right. Yeah. 100%. And most of these agents, they don't know what to do with these houses when they get them. Because they're used to walking in these houses that are ready to be lived in, and then they every now and then they get a referral from somebody or they stumble across it or what have you. It's a past client of theirs and they connected them to their brother Jimmy or whatever, and they're like, Matthew, they'll call me up. They're like, I got this house that needs a lot of work, And I said, all right, that's what I'm here for. And let's take a look at it. But some of these agents, that's not their bread and butter. So, it is a one off thing that they come across, and that's okay. And at that point, we can be a resource for them, because it's not something they deal with and they don't understand construction costs and holding costs and everything. And it's not just you buy the property and you minus your construction cost and here's your profit. Like, it doesn't really work like that. You've got to take out these certain costs and your holding costs and all that and your closing fees, and you have to just kind of educate them at times if it's not something they deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah, 100%. But isn't that how most of things are, right? You're always educating somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You're either educating a seller, you're educating a buyer, you're educating a teammate, or you're educating somebody you're working with, collaboratively. And that's how we get better, because through education is how we learn as well, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned something. If we're not learning something new, it's not a good thing. I'm really deep into the AI part of things right now, and let me tell you, I am learning and I need to learn quick because I mean, it kind of messes up your CRM a little bit. It's a necessary evil, I got to figure it out. But then again, we go back to analysis paralysis. If I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do this AI stuff, I'm never going to learn until I just let it run. And yeah, we're going to probably make some people mad and it's not going to work right. But at the end of the day, I know that it's going to help me in my business and I've got to do it. So we got that started over like 2 weeks ago. It's texting agents for us, having conversations, adding them, and I didn't have to do anything about it. I didn't. We've got over 400 or 500 that have been added that agreed to follow up with us, and we have yet to talk to them. It was all just through AI, and that's when it can get really scalable.
Yeah. So what kind of pushed you? Because AI has been around for a little bit now, and I'm hearing more and more people using it. So what's pushing you to now implement that now versus waiting another 6 months or doing it 6 months ago?
Well, I guess I had somebody. I was in a position where I just knew my business needed something to make it more scalable because I was trying to scale. And I had in that group, that mentorship that I'd joined a while back when I first started or close to it. This guy was, I don't know, he was always implementing or talking about AI, and I'd got to talking to him, and he was like, "Hey, I'm rolling out this AI bot that I've created." And of course, he charged me for it, which is totally fine. The guy needs to make money on what he's created, and I said, "Yeah, like let me try it." I've been needing to do something, but I just knew it was going to be extra cost AI because you got to pay for the AI itself, and then its cost per text message is more expensive than your regular text message. So I knew there was going to be some added cost in there. I just wanted to make sure I was ready before I essentially pulled the trigger on that and wanted to move forward with it.
Do you feel that part of the reason of a lot of people not implementing it is just the feel of lack of control?
Yeah, or the unknown, because I mean it does have a mind of its own, right? Like you essentially can tell it what to do, but it it is different. You have to be very specific about what you want it to do and how you want it to answer back and what tone and all of that. Like there's a lot of it's not just you. I think think the intricacies behind it is what scares people, because you have to
Mhm.
connect it to Go High Level. It's a separate platform, and then you have to train the bot essentially. You have to put parameters in there that the bot has to stay within. And if you don't know the right resources to call on, it's like learning something totally new of how to set this thing up. It's not as simple as just copy and paste it in there and this thing does exactly what you want it to do. It's smart, but you also got to give it a prompt and you have to tell it what to do.
There's a trial and error period, right? But again, like
Yeah.
you said, if you don't start with it, you'll never learn it. And the technology is just going to become more and more advanced as time goes on. And this learning curve is going to become steeper and steeper.
And I knew if I didn't start implementing this, I knew I was going to get left behind, because that's the future. Whether we like it or not, like AI is definitely, you got to learn how to use it, and you've got to be able to utilize that to your advantage. And I knew if I didn't start now, I was going to be behind, and I just wanted to go ahead and get ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So are you primarily using that to drive outreach to your realtors, or are you using that to drive outreach to your buyers as well?
So I bought or two separate bots. I have one for my agents that I'm trying to do now. Right now, I have one that is strictly for MLS offers. So it gathers data for MLS offers, like condition of the property. It'll have a three or four, five text message sequence with them asking information like roof, HVAC, overall condition. If there's any foundation, like it kind of texts through all that. So then that saves me on the front end of having to call and ask about all that, where then I kind of got, if I know that information, I got a pretty good general idea or sense of what rehab's going to be. And so then I can crank out some offers relatively quickly. And then that's our MLS bot. And then we just have an agent outreach bot that its goal is just to simply connect with the agents, through cold outreach. We kind of say, hey, can you help me buy a house? Hey, can you help me with a house here in the area? And then from there, it has another 3 to 5 text message conversation, and you give the AI objectives, right? So your objective on the first is to kind of tell them what you're about, what you do. And at the end of the conversation, you want to have the agent agree that they'll send you something or agree to work with us. And at that point, kind of completes its objective and adds it to your follow up sequence, or it doesn't. If they don't agree to it or something happens, then it'll just say agent doesn't want to work with us. And um, so yeah, you just got to go through. And I have another buyer bot. I haven't rolled it out yet, but because agents my strong suit, I need to make sure that's up and running first. I don't want to get my hands in the pot too much, because I've it's a lot of moving pieces, and I just got to make sure I'm not wasting money.
Yeah. Walk before you run. Get one up and running. That's where your bread and butter comes from.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shifting gears just a little bit. So with the way your business is structured, going directly to realtors right now, there's a lot of talk in North Carolina specifically about some rule changes that are coming down the pipes around assignments and double closes and what constitutes a wholesaler and wholesale deal. How do you see those changes as they currently are in whatever version of the bill they're on now impacting your business? And do you think that because of the way that you do business with realtors, you will be more or less impacted?
So actually, I paid for a. It was very small. It was like $25, but there was this attorney in North Carolina that I think, did some wholesaling himself back in the day, and um, he was teaching us about the bill, and we'd got on there and asked him some questions, and I don't know if it's going to change as much as I thought, to be honest. I mean, I already put assignment clauses within the contract to make sure that I do have the capability to assign, and I make sure that the seller understands that I intend to profit and it's not my primary house, right? And so I make sure, like, I've already got that stuff implemented in like addendums and stuff extra in that T2 or T12 contract the NC realtor whatever has, and um, I don't think it's gonna affect us too much. I mean, assignments are not banned. That's not what it's saying. It's just saying that your intent has to be that you intend to purchase it first. So he was saying, well, what does intent mean? Like, how do you verify that intent? So I think they're just gonna have to be more due diligence on the front end, right? I'm gonna have to, instead of just getting it under contract and trying to assign it, I need to get it under contract, get construction quotes out there, get an inspector out there, because my intent was to buy it at first. And I do buy properties. I mean, full transparency, I do buy properties. I don't always wholesale them. And then, if your intent was to buy it first and then you have other properties that you want to, move on after that, then you just have to make sure your intent is right. And it's just going to be a little bit more due diligence. And I kind of look at it as a positive. Maybe it weeds out some of the competition. You just got to be smarter and more advanced in how you're going to handle things, So I don't necessarily look at it as a negative. I just look at it as I need to know how to pivot when it gets here, and I want to be ahead of that curve when it does. Hence why I talked to that attorney for a couple hours the other night, because I know that North Carolina is a big part of my business, and yeah, I don't think it's going to be a hindrance. You just got to go about it a different way.
From my reading of it, I think what will probably happen is the guys that are already established and doing well will continue to be established and do well. It'll increase the hurdle for new wholesalers to enter the market.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the, we'll call them bad actors that are out there that are locking stuff up and then leaving sellers high and dry,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna get pushed out of the market, or they're gonna have to get better.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're not going to be any place for them in the market. So I think there's definitely some good things. I think some of the legislation changes around you have whatever many days that you have to give the money back, that or that kind of thing. They can charge you the due
Yeah.
diligence, that'll adjust some things. I think they'll just basically make it so that no wholesaler is giving any due diligence money to any buyer
Mm-hmm.
or seller. I mean, some of that stuff, and then obviously the double close piece, that if it's still in there, not long double closes will change some, but
Yeah. And that's what the attorney said. It was like the wording in there is simultaneously double close. So is a double close, is that 9 a.m. and then you sell it at 12, or does a double close simultaneously when you sell it the next day or 2 days from now? And I think this is really going to be a period in time where wholesalers really need to be in tune with their buyers. They need to have instead of blasting it out to a list, you need to have really good buyers in your back pocket, like 5 to 8 in every market that you can call, and they're serious buyers. And if they tell you that, hey, they're going to buy the property, either one, you figure out a way that they can compensate you, or two, they understand that they're going to have to put more due diligence down, like as almost like a placeholder for you. So whenever you do, quote unquote, do not do a simultaneously double close and close 2 or 3 days after, you're good. But I don't. I have really, of course, I have a buyers list, but there's specific buyers that always see my stuff before anybody else. And those guys, I have no doubt that we can keep doing business, and you just got to do it a little different, and make sure that you build those relationships with the strong buyers in the market.
but you're telling me all the houses I see on Facebook, those aren't the cream of the crop wholesale deals?
Hey, my thing is one of two things. If you've got a post on Facebook to sell it, I don't think I've ever sold a property on Facebook, to be honest with you. I think everything is done through tax records with me and just previous relationships. If you have to post on Facebook to sell it, you don't have a buyer's list probably, and your deal's probably not good enough to sell it. I don't know. And maybe I'm wrong. I know people use Facebook and they're very good at it, but I don't think that should be your primary method. I think that you should build a relationship with these buyers that you can call on, because down the road, you might need a contractor, right? You might need a contractor that you want to do something with. If you haven't built relationships with these buyers that are already established, they're hard set to probably not give you their contractors in anyway, rightfully slow, because they don't want you to steal them from you. But if you have a good relationship with buyers and they know that you bring them consistent deals, and it's somebody that you can call on. I just talked to a buyer today. His name's Jim. I've sold some deals to him. Went and rode dirt bikes with him. We're very close, and he's still a buyer. For me. And I had him a question about a piece of property that had some land, and he got back to me. Don't have it under contract yet. There's trust that happens there. So it's all about just relationships, I think, in this business, and I think that they go a long way.
Yeah, and a good relationship with a good buyer,
Mm-hmm.
will lead to a good relationship with a second good buyer and a third
Mm-hmm.
good buyer, right? Because
Yep.
most buyers only going to take so many into their funnel at once, and you
Mm-hmm.
keep bringing them good deals. Eventually, they're going to say, "Oh, I don't need that right now," but this other guy that I know is buying is looking, right? That
Right.
kind of thing. So it's such a networking thing, just like everything else in the world. You gotta do what you say you're going to do. You got to be good to people, be honest, be fair, and consistently move the ball forward. Right.
Hmm.
And I know we talked kind of before this podcast about the value of consistency you've seen. Can you just give us a little story about what you tell your employees about consistency and building your pipeline?
Yeah. So before they start, with me, I'll clearly lay out the job. And I'm like, if you don't want to be on the phone most of the day for the first 2 or 3 months like this, please don't come on, because that's what this is. For the first 2 or 3 months, you have to cut your teeth. You have to build a top line. And if you're consistent enough, whether you're doing direct to seller marketing with SMS, email marketing, whatever you want to do, if you're consistent with it, I believe it'll work. And I tell my guys, expect to get a deal within 2 or 3 months, right? Like once you build your prop line, you got agents you're following up with. That's generally, if you're hitting your KPIs like you need to hit your KPIs, that's when you're going to see a deal. And I understand that. And I know that the KPIs, they're KPIs, key performance indicators, like they are specific to what goes on in your business. So I know, like, if my guys hit 30 conversations a day and they make so many offers a day and send out so many written contracts, I know kind of what we're going to get in return from that. And so as long as they're hitting their KPIs, I'm okay coughing up some money the first month or two when they're building their pop line, because I've done it long enough that I know that month 3 or 4 comes around and contracts start coming. That's just following up and building a pop line in any business. If you're in sales, building a pop line, you're just only as good as your next deal.
Yeah, it's so true. And the consistency theme is so apparent across everything I've ever done, right? If you think that you're going to go from where you are today to where you want to be in one or two big jumps, like it's just not going to happen. You have to just consistently try to figure out what's the next thing I can do to make this better, to fix the problem I currently have, and then face the next problem, and then the next problem, and the next problem. And eventually you'll get a year or two down the road and you'll be like, I can't believe I've gone so far. And it won't feel like you've taken this huge jump, but you have. And I think
Right.
that's also deceptive for entrepreneurs and business owners, because you don't feel like you're ever gotten to your goal. And yet, if you
Mhm.
look back at yourself, when you started to where you are today, you're like, God,
Mhm.
I remember wanting to be there. And now you're
Yeah.
there and you're like, God, I wish I was the next stage.
I remember whenever I had left my job and I'd been wholesaling on my own for like 3 or 4 months after I left my job. It was like January of that year. Me and my wife had, I think, $1,200 or $1,300 to our name. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not good. And if it's just crazy, like how far I've came since then. And then that month, it was just like a month to month thing. I would hit a deal, and then finally, that's when I told myself I gotta know how to do this more consistently. And so that's when I joined a team and cut my teeth for a little bit for someone else, just so I could learn some more. And yeah, $1,200 in the bank account when I first started. I'm definitely no millionaire at the moment, but I'm a lot further than $1,200 along, and it's crazy to think about where we've come from.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it comes fast too. Like I was looking at something earlier, and a year ago I had a loan come across my desk, and it was like a $500,000 loan. Couldn't get it done. Just didn't have the size yet. Right, had to turn that down. I was so disappointed. And now, like I'm consistently putting out almost $1 million a month in
Hmm.
loans.
Wow.
And it's not bragging. It's just like in one year, that
Hmm.
much change has happened, that
Right.
now, like if a $500,000 loan comes in, like we have to decide whether we want to do it or not can we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's good. I mean, so you're in that private money sector. I assume that's kind of were you privately funding most of your stuff? Like you got private money individuals who you're connecting with, so you can fund these deals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so we're raising capital
Hmm.
for our fund from private individuals, and then we issue that out as loans
Right.
to real estate investors and whatnot. And it's the same exact thing of what you're doing, right? You spend a lot of time talking on the phone and introducing yourself to people and trying to convince them that yes, this is the right place to put their money. And then you spend a lot of time trying to find deals and networking and having conversations like this, because I might talk to you today and I don't need a loan like you have. And then in 3 months, I'll get a phone call. Right.
Yeah.
And then you just
Mhm.
have to constantly follow up with people and make sure they know that you have what they might need at some point, and then be there for them when they need it, and not, take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, you got to be able to deliver. And that's the same thing is like
For
whenever
sure.
we get a contract on the line, we got to be able to deliver on it, you know?
Yep, agreed. Anything else? So actually, before I go there, so if you are just getting started in wholesaling and you want to kind of take this path or move forward, how would you start going about? Would you start just out with, hey, I'm going to try to drive for dollars? Would you jump right into a mentorship and pay money for someone to learn how to do it? What would you recommend? How does someone get started into wholesaling, or no, you don't need wholesale? Someone that just wants to find direct to seller leads.
Yeah, so I think you got to look at your resources and what you have available to you. If money is not necessarily an issue to you and you're just looking to get into the space, maybe learn and earn's not really the way you want to go, but you want to pay for a mentorship where you can kind of learn these tactics, these methods. I know that I host a free Facebook group that I try to get in there and talk about what we do. I don't charge anything for it. Every now and then I'll get somebody that'll use my CRM and it gives me like a $30 a month kickback. I'm not, but you can find people out there like myself. Now I couldn't help you with direct seller marketing, right? Because I mainly just do agent outreach. That's my thing. So I'll tell you right now, I'm not the guy you want to learn direct to seller from. I'll tell you how to go drive for dollars and what to do with a contract when you get it. But you wouldn't want to spend money to hear me talk about direct to seller because that's just not, it's not my expertise. So if you have money out there, I think like joining a group and getting to learn that is a good way to do it. If you don't and you're serious about it and you can be committed, I think learning and earning is one of the best ways to do it. Is you get in there like I did with that guy in California, you learn exactly how to do it. How did he scale? He's got to be big enough to where he can hire someone, It's like, how is he doing it? And so that's what I did. And, I learned under someone else also making a living. And then at that point, I saw that I could do this on my own. So I made the jump to do that. So those are the two main ways that comes to my mind, but there's definitely free ways to do it too. You can join local Facebook groups. I mean, I started on YouTube, and then when you get a contract, there's people out there that'd be happy to help you, or if you just get someone that's interested in selling, I'm sure someone like myself or Lauren could say, hey, this is probably where you need to be on the deal. Go see if you can lock it up, and go from there. There's resources out there. If you want to do it the freeway, the internet's a great thing, and it's out there. Just do you have time to kind of comb through that stuff? Is what you need to ask yourself.
We live in such an amazing time. You think 20 years ago, before the internet was a thing, right? How
Mm-hmm.
hard it would have been to get the information that now we can pull up on our phones while we're sitting at the beach.
Right. Yep.
We have more knowledge in our pockets or next to
Mm-hmm.
our head than most of the rest of known civilization combined had access to.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and so anybody that says that I just can't do it that's just a cop out excuse.
Mm-hmm.
There is no reason that you can't do anything that I've done or anything that you've done or anything anybody else for that matter has done. It just takes consistency, hard work, maybe a little bit of luck at times, but mostly consistency and hard work.
Right.
Willingness to look and willingness to fail. You know,
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna fail, and we still like I failed so much. I told my guys this morning, I'm pretty like hands off, and I've had to tell myself like that's not that I'm so used to doing everything myself that whenever I got the guys in there and they started producing, and you'll as a business owner you'll see that they'll start producing, they do really good, and then it kind of falls off. But you gotta I read this book about extreme ownership, and you just need to look at it and say, I'm the reason he's not making his calls because I haven't been strict on his KPIs, or I haven't given him the tools or the ability to do this the right way. I put too much on his plate through this AI thing and trying to implement that now we're falling off on our conversation. So I had to take a step back even this morning and tell myself that and talk to the guys and say, all right, look, we haven't been hitting our KPIs here lately. It's probably because we've just been trying to implement some stuff. So let's take a step back. Let's go back to the basics. Let's get going there, and I'll ease back into the AI because I know it's necessary. But we're going through growing pains now just with that, and so I think realizing and staying on top of stuff is the best way.
and Extreme Ownership is one of my top 4 or 5 books,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, because I'll be honest. When I looked at the conversations and stuff this morning, I was pretty frustrated. I was like, oh, how are we only having this many conversations? And I had one of two options. I had one of two choices. I could have went to him mad because he didn't do it, or I could look at myself in the mirror and say, well, did he not do it because he didn't want to do it? Maybe that's it. But I had to look in the mirror and say, I didn't give him enough tools and resources to for him to be able to succeed. Or maybe I gave him too many, right? And so I think that conversation went a lot better this morning by me taking extreme ownership of that situation and why the outcome was the way it was, rather than me coming to him and saying, "Hey, man, you haven't hit your KPIs. Like, what's going on?" Right? Like, instead of putting the blame on him, when you take it, and if you can get a team that each one has extreme ownership, that's, I think, when you have a lot of success. And we're
And
working on
even
that.
if he
Definitely not
and
perfect.
even if he didn't do it because he didn't want to, that's
Hmm.
still on the leader, because as the
Right.
leader, you didn't motivate him to want to do it, or you hired the wrong person for the role.
Correct.
So either
100%.
way, it's your job.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
I had to definitely take a look in the mirror this morning after I got. I was not happy with the situation, but I had to realize that I had to take, as the leader of the company, it falls on my shoulders, right? And I had to realize that and handle it in a different manner, you know.
yep, 100%. All right. So, question I ask everybody towards the end of the interview: knowing what you know now, and you're a fairly young guy, so this is be interesting compared to some of the other people I've had on. But knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself when you were 18, or what advice would you give your children when they turn 18?
Whether it's real estate or anything, you have to find a way to create value in the marketplace. There's tons of ways out there. It doesn't have to be real estate, right? But if you can create value and you can position yourself to be a valuable asset to someone, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to. You look at these trades, that let's just talk about trades for a second. I'm not one that's out here swinging hammers, but like, trade is essentially bringing value and getting paid for it. So, trades is a good way of doing it, but especially with the way AI is going now and different all this advancement, getting to learn this stuff where you can give an offer to someone, like you and I both read the Alex Hormozy book, right? Is if you know that you can create an offer that is a no-brainer offer, that like, why would someone not go with it? Then like, you can create
Mm-hmm.
value to that individual and only get paid once you increase what they're doing now, right? You can come to them and say, hey, look, I'm not charging you to do anything. I've got this, but I want X amount after this, right? So what's in it for them? Nothing, right? I mean, well, everything's in it to gain for them. And so if you can come to the marketplace and create value, I think that's what I would tell myself. 10 years ago at this point, I'm 28, and I'd have been 18 coming out of college or coming out of high school. I could have told myself, hey, I don't have to go to school. I just got to learn how to create value and find ways to implement that in people's lives. People want one main thing in life, they want their life to be easier in some capacity. In most times. So if you can figure out a way to automate something, make their life easier, give them something they enjoy, provide value to them that way, and charge a premium for it, then you're on the right track.
Very wise words from a very young man, as someone that's a decade and a year older than you.
Yeah,
So
well, I've got a long way to go. I've got a long way to go.
your head's in the right spot for being 28. And I think the other piece on what all you said too is value is different than price. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that gets lost in the ether a lot. Just because something is more or less expensive doesn't mean have any implication on what the value of it is to someone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
Matt, thank you for your time today. If somebody wants to reach out, something you said really stuck with them, they want to talk to you. What's the best way for them to reach you?
You can find me on Facebook, Matthew Carrigan, my name. I'm sure it'll pull up. It's me and my family, my wife and girls there on the profile picture. I also have a Facebook group. It's called Wholesaling On and Off Market Deals with Agents. And so if you want to find me through there, that's you're talking about starting something. That's a great way. I mean, it's free. I try to, if I'm not busy, I try to do a Zoom a week where I get on there and just answer people's questions. You had a contract, you had a question on it. Maybe I can help you fill it out or whatever you need me to do. I'm just trying to be a resource. So yeah, that's a good way of reaching me, and reach out via Facebook, and I'll be happy to connect with you. And yeah. Be awesome.
Awesome. And I will make sure both those pages are linked in the show notes so anybody can easily reach out to Matt. I would recommend you do so. His wealth of information, especially if you're looking to get into wholesaling or you want to talk about how to talk to real estate agents.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you again for your time. And to everybody else, thank you for listening. And we will see you again next time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to Brick by Brick Wealth Building Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show. For more tips, resources, and updates on my journey, follow me on Invest with Lauren. Let's keep building wealth, one brick at a time. See you next week.